Hi, I'm Mary, and today I'm going to tell you a story. I've never told anyone before a story about why I haven't spoken to someone incredibly important in my life for 20 years. You might think you already know the reason, but I promise you it's not what you expect. This story is full of surprises, twists, and moments that turned everything upside down. If you're watching this right now, you've probably wondered why someone would stay silent for so long. What kind of secret or pain could cause that? Well, stick with me, because by the end of this video you'll understand exactly why, and maybe you'll see things from a completely different perspective. But before we jump in, I want to ask you to hit the subscribe button, because I have a lot more stories coming your way that will keep you on the edge of your seat, and I'd love for you to be part of this community. So why haven't I spoken in 20 years? The truth is, it's not a simple answer, and it's not because of a fight or a betrayal that you might guess. This silence comes from something much deeper, something that changed my life forever, and I'm ready to share all of it with you today, because holding this in for so long has been heavy, and I want to finally get it off my chest now. Imagine waking up one day realizing that a single decision you made would change everything: the people you love, the way you see yourself, and the future you thought you had planned. It's scary, it's confusing, and sometimes it feels like you're completely alone in the world. That's how I felt, and I'm going to take you back to where it all started, so you can understand what happened, what I went through, and why silence became my only option. This story is not just about me, it's about the secrets we keep, the pain we hide, and the moments that force us to choose between speaking out or staying quiet. And if you ever felt like you had to carry a secret that no one else could know, this story will speak to you in a way you didn't expect. So get comfortable and stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you is going to change everything you thought you knew about silence. Now, before I go any further, tell me in the comments below, have you ever stopped talking to someone important in your life for a long time? If you have, I want to hear why and what that felt like. Let's share this together, because sometimes our stories are what heal us. So remember, subscribe, like, and share if you want to hear the full story and the truth behind my silence for 20 years. And now let's go back in time and start from the beginning. Before everything changed, I lived a pretty normal life, nothing fancy, but filled with moments that felt real and important to me. I grew up in a family that looked like any other: neighbors, friends, laughter, and the usual ups and downs of everyday life. There was one person in particular who I thought I could trust completely, someone who I believed was a constant in my life, someone who I never imagined would be part of a silence that was to come. But as you'll soon find out, things are rarely as simple as they seem. Back then, I didn't realize the small cracks that were forming beneath the surface. I remember little things like the way conversations would suddenly stop, or how some smiles didn't quite reach the eyes, little signs that maybe something was off, but I was too young, or maybe too hopeful, to see the full picture. At school, I was just like any other kid, trying to fit in, dreaming about the future, but always feeling a little different in a way I couldn't explain. Sometimes I wondered if that feeling was connected to what was happening at home, but I pushed those thoughts aside because life was busy and confusing enough as it was. As I got older, the relationship between me and that important person became more complicated, not because of big fights, but because of silence, small misunderstandings, and a growing distance that neither of us knew how to fix. I wanted to understand what was wrong, but every time I tried to ask questions, the answers were vague, or they just changed the subject. It was frustrating and painful, but it also planted a seed of doubt in my heart, something that would grow and change everything. Much later, looking back, I realized that I was already preparing myself for the silence that would come, for the walls that would build between us, and for the day when words would simply stop being enough. But at that time, all I knew was that something was wrong, and I had no idea how deep the damage really was. The truth is that life kept moving, and I kept hoping that things would get better, that somehow we would find a way back to what we once had. But the more I hoped, the further away it all seemed to slip. I learned that sometimes hope is the hardest thing to hold on to, especially when the people we love become strangers without explanation. And so the stage was set for a decision that I never thought I would have to make, a decision that would change everything forever. But I'll get to that in the next chapter, because that's where the real story begins. The moment that changed everything came unexpectedly, like a sudden storm on a clear day. One decision that seemed small but had consequences. I never imagined it wasn't a fight or a huge argument that caused the silence. Instead, it was something much deeper and more complicated than anyone could guess. It all started when I made a choice that I thought was right at the time, but looking back, I see now how much it hurt the people around me, including the person I stopped speaking to. I remember the days after that decision were some of the loneliest I have ever experienced. The phone calls stopped, the messages went unanswered, and the silence grew louder with each passing day. It felt like a wall was being built brick by brick between us, and I had no idea how to tear it down. I tried to explain myself, but my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. It was like talking to someone who wasn't really there, or maybe someone who didn't want to be there anymore. The confusion, mixed with sadness, was overwhelming, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing a part of myself in the process. But the hardest part wasn't just the silence, it was the realization that the person I stopped talking to wasn't who I thought they were. For years, I believed I knew everything about them, their intentions, feelings, and reasons. But slowly I discovered that there were things hidden beneath the surface, secrets and truths that had been kept from me. The first plot twist came when I found out that this person had been hiding a part of their life from me, something so big that it shattered my trust completely. It was a betrayal, not in the way you might think, but a betrayal that cut deeper than any fight could, because it made me question everything I thought was real and true about us. It changed how I saw them and how I saw myself in relation to them. The silence that followed wasn't just a pause, it became a barrier, a shield to protect myself from more pain. It was my way of coping with a reality that was too hard to face head on. But even with all the hurt and confusion, I never stopped hoping that one day the silence would end, that somehow we would find a way back to each other. That hope kept me going even in the darkest moments. And now, as I tell you this story, I want you to think about the times when silence wasn't just quiet, but a loud noise in your life, a sign that something important was broken. And if you ever felt that kind of silence too, I want to hear about it in the comments below. Share your story or what you think might have happened in mine. Let's connect, because sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. And just as the silence grew, so did the obstacles in my life, challenges that tested me in ways I never expected. But I'll save that for the next part of the story. After the silence settled in and the distance grew, the challenges I faced seemed to multiply in ways I never imagined. At first, I thought I could move on quickly, but the reality was much harsher than I expected. Every day brought new reminders of what I lost and what could never be the same again. The unanswered calls, the missed birthdays, the messages that never got sent, they all piled up like heavy stones on my heart. I tried reaching out sometimes, but the walls I faced were stronger than anything I had known. The person I once trusted now felt like a stranger, someone I couldn't reach no matter how hard I tried. The isolation was suffocating. It made me question my worth, my decisions, and even the memories I held dear. But then came something unexpected, something that shook the very foundation of my world. 20 years after the silence began, I received a letter that would change everything and reopen wounds I thought were long healed. This letter was unlike any other. It wasn't just words on paper, it was a key, message from the past that promised to reveal truths hidden for decades. As I read those lines, my heart pounded with a mix of fear, hope, and curiosity. The letter said things that made me question what I thought I knew about that person, about myself, and about the silence that had lasted so long. It revealed secrets that were kept away from me, secrets that explained motives, actions, and feelings I never understood before. But with that knowledge came more questions, more confusion, and a new kind of pain. The letter was a reminder that some stories don't end neatly, that sometimes answers only lead to more mysteries. It was at this moment that I realized the silence wasn't just about me or that person. It was about something much bigger, a web of lies, fears, and misunderstandings that trapped us both in a place where words no longer mattered. The letter forced me to look back at every moment with fresh eyes and to question my own role in the story. It was humbling and heartbreaking, but it was also a chance for clarity, something I hadn't felt in years. And just when I thought I was beginning to understand, there was another shock, another twist that made me see everything in a new light. Someone I trusted deeply, someone I believed had my best interests at heart, had been manipulating the situation, pulling strings behind the scenes, turning truth into deception for reasons I still struggle to comprehend. This betrayal was the hardest to swallow because it came from within the circle of people I thought were safe. It was a painful reminder that not all enemies come from outside. Sometimes they hide where we least expect it. So, as I stood at this crossroads, faced with secrets, lies, and betrayal, I knew that my journey was far from over, and the decisions I would make next could change everything again. But before I move on, I want to ask you, what would you do if you found out the people you trusted most were the ones hurting you the most? Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts and stories, because maybe together we can find some answers and strength to keep going. The next chapter will take us to the turning point, the moment when everything finally made sense and the truth came out. But for now, let's pause here. That letter I received after all those years was more than just paper and ink. It was a window into the truth, a key to unlocking mysteries that had haunted me for 2 decades. As I read every word slowly and carefully, the pieces of the puzzle started to fit together in ways I never imagined. The silence that had stretched so long was not just a result of my choices or the person I stopped talking to. It was part of a much bigger story, something tangled in lies, fears, and misunderstandings that had Nothing to do with me at first glance. I learned that the real reason behind the silence was tied to someone I had trusted deeply, someone whose actions had set off a chain of events that neither of us could control. The shock of realizing that I was not the cause, but more of a victim in this story was overwhelming. It changed how I viewed myself and the people around me. Suddenly the lines between right and wrong blurred, and I had to rethink everything I believed about loyalty, love, and betrayal. The letter also revealed secrets that had been buried for years, secrets that explained why the person I couldn't speak to acted the way they did, and why silence became the only option left for us. But it wasn't just about understanding the past, it was about seeing the bigger picture and the roles we all played in this complicated web. The real villain, or hero, was not as clear as I had thought, and then came the moment that hit hardest, the revelation about the person who had truly started all of this. The third party who manipulated and controlled the narrative behind the scenes had been someone close to me, someone I never suspected, someone I had called a friend. It was painful to accept that trust had been broken, not by those I thought, but by someone hiding in plain sight. This revelation opened new wounds, but also brought clarity and a strange kind of relief, because finally I could see where the silence came from, not just from pain, but from protection, confusion, and a desperate attempt to survive emotionally. And as I processed all this, I realized that the silence was both a prison and a shield, something I had built to keep myself safe, but that also kept me trapped. The choice now was mine to make: keep living behind that wall, or try to break free and find peace in a new way. I hope that as you listen to this part of my story, you can feel the weight of that moment, the confusion, the sadness, and the strange hope that came with it. It was the turning point, the moment when I finally understood that the past was not the enemy, but a part of the journey. And if you have ever been stuck in a silence that feels endless, maybe this will give you hope to start your own path toward healing. But there is more to come, more challenges, more decisions, and the final moments where everything will be decided. So stay with me for the next chapter, where the drama reaches its peak and the real battle begins. After the shock of the truth and the weight of betrayal settled in, I found myself at a crossroads, a place where every choice felt both terrifying and hopeful. I was torn between holding onto the silence that had protected me for so long and risking everything to reach out and maybe rebuild what had been broken. The fear of being hurt again was real, but so was the longing for peace and understanding. Each day became a battle inside my mind, replaying old memories, questioning my decisions, and wondering if there was still a way forward. I remember the nights lying awake thinking about what might happen if I tried to speak again, the what ifs that kept me trapped in a loop of doubt and hope. Then, out of nowhere, an unexpected opportunity appeared, a message, a sign that maybe it was time to break the silence. But just when I thought things might be clearer, a new twist complicated everything again. The person who sent that message wasn't who I expected it to be, and their words held both an apology and a secret that changed the game. The fear returned stronger than ever, mixed with curiosity and a desperate need to understand what was really going on. It was the moment that made me realize that this story wasn't just about silence, but about trust, betrayal, forgiveness, and the courage to face the unknown. The internal conflict became almost unbearable, but I knew that whatever decision I made next would shape the rest of my life. The struggle was real and raw, but it was also the turning point that pushed me towards something new. I want you to think for a moment, what would you do if you were in my place, faced with the choice to either keep your walls up or tear them down and risk everything? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, because sometimes hearing other perspectives helps us find our own strength. And as this internal storm raged on, the chance to change everything was just around the corner. But before I tell you what happened next, let's pause here so you can take a moment to breathe and get ready for the final part of my story, the ending that you won't see coming. In the end, I decided to break the silence, not to return to the past, but to free myself from its hold. It wasn't about fixing what was broken or pretending everything was okay. It was about reclaiming my voice and finding peace inside me after so many years of pain, confusion, and silence. I chose a new beginning, a path where I could live without carrying the weight of secrets anymore. The conversations that followed weren't perfect or easy. There was still hurt and distance, but there was also honesty and a chance for healing. It was clear that not everything could be undone, and some wounds would take time to heal, but simply speaking my truth gave me strength. I realized that silence can protect us, but it can also trap us, and that sometimes the hardest thing to do is to find the courage to speak when it feels safest to stay quiet. I want you to remember that your voice matters, and that whatever silence you carry, whether from pain, fear, or protection, there is always hope for a new chapter. And if you have your own story of silence or reconciliation, I'd love to hear it in the comments below, because sharing our stories helps us heal together. Before we finish, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because there are more stories coming that will touch your heart and maybe even change your life. Also, check out the video that is appearing on the screen now. It's about how I started to rebuild my life after all of this, and I think you'll find it inspiring. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm Mary, and I'll see you in the next video.